Bienvenue dans cette magnifique salle du nouveau siècle pour une présentation quand même très attendue cet après-midi. C'est une séance spéciale Small Town Big Story, excuse me, qui est déjà diffusée sur Sky UK depuis le 25 février, qui était une série que nous, on attendait beaucoup, parce que vous allez voir, elle est très prenante dès les premières images, et puis parce que elle, la comédienne centrale, l'actrice la plus importante dans ce show, c'est Christina Hendricks. Ah ben oui, vous pouvez l'applaudir déjà. Alors, la série est imaginée par Chris O'Dowd, qui ne peut pas être là, mais Christina Hendricks, on la connaît tous. On la connaît tous depuis Mad Men, où elle était cette comédienne extraordinaire, qui est d'une beauté absolument spectaculaire et qui a en même temps une subtilité de jeu que vous expliquera, avec qui Olivier Joyard vous expliquera comment elle joue en lui posant des questions. Olivier Joyard, bien évidemment, que j'aurais dû présenter dès le début, mais vous le connaissez parfaitement, vu qu'il vient chaque année et qu'il est journaliste aux Inrocks. Voilà. Alors après, on l'a aussi retrouvé au cinéma. Moi, je l'ai adoré dans Drive, aux côtés de Ryan Gosling. Et puis après, elle s'est remise encore à la série. C'était, je crois, 3 saisons avec Good Girls en 2018. Et elle est là pour nous présenter, je recommence, Small Town Big Story. Et j'attends de vous que vous lui fassiez un accueil à la lilloise, s'il vous plaît. Merci d'accueillir Christina Hendricks.
Thank you guys. It's an honor to be here.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je vais parler anglais très très vite, même tout de suite en fait, parce que je pense qu'on n'a pas beaucoup de temps à perdre. I was just telling the audience that I was going to switch to English because we have no time to lose here.
Thank you very much.
We have about 30 minutes with you this afternoon because of this new show called Small Town Big Story, for which no one has seen nothing here in this room. So we'll try to discuss, what it looks like, what it's about, what it means for you. Maybe just a quick word of introduction before we see the trailer. What can we expect?
Sure. This is a story about a woman who goes back to her hometown in Ireland as a Hollywood producer, bringing a big Hollywood production to town. She hasn't been home for 20 years, and you realize she's going back to face a secret that happened in her early life.
Oh, wow, okay. Let's watch the trailer, and we'll discuss it further.
Did you hear about the TV production?
Ooh. Here, when did this come in?
Apparently, one of the producers used to live here years ago.
Who says I know the producer lady?
She called the surgery looking for you.
Sorry.
Are you going to tell them all what happened, Shamie Proctor?
So as we see in the trailer, which is quite consistent with what the show is funny, it's witty, it's got a little bit of bad manners. You know, it's always on the verge of awkward comedy, but it's also an alien story dealing with sci-fi elements, a love story as well, in a way. That's a lot. Can you tell us how you got involved in this project and what was the catch for you?
Seems like what else can we pack in there, right? It does have a lot of elements, but I think when you all will watch it, if you can just relax into it, you'll see that all those different elements really just create a tone that I think within a few minutes you just kind of settle into and you realize how unique it is. But when I got the script the first time I read it, I was laughing out loud and chuckling and had a bit of a side smile, and I immediately called my manager and I went, wow, I really liked it. And he went, I really liked it too. And I was like, it's weird and I love it. So it was I didn't take any convincing. When I read it, I knew I wanted to be a part of it.
What was the, what made it stand out? Because you get quite a lot of scripts, I guess, or what really in the writing and the tone made it really look like something else?
I think, it's written by Chris O'Dowd, and I'm sure there are a lot of fans of Chris out here, and he is a quirky, funny, interesting guy. And I think if you're true to yourself and you put your personality on the page, it's going to be different from anyone else. It's like an actor. You could think, oh, well, anyone could play this role, but there's just something unique about you that's going to make it different from someone else. So I just feel like Chris was really true to himself, and so therefore it feels like nothing else I've seen, but a little bit nostalgic for shows like Northern Exposure, which was one of my favorite shows growing up. The idea of being this small town with this community of eccentric people, and I loved that it was an ensemble piece that concentrated on character. So even though it has all these elements and supernatural and stuff, it really is about characters.
Yeah, I see. And it's also, you're talking about Northern Exposure, almost Twin Peaks in a way. I don't know if that's a show that you look up to, but there's a small town strangeness in that the show tackles a lot. Do you like strangeness?
I love strangeness, and I love small towns, and I love eccentric people. So when I read it, I thought, I want to be in the pub with these people. I want to hang out with these fun weirdos.
Did you were mentioning Chris O'Dowd, who created the show, whom we know as an actor more, at least when we're in the public. He's more well known as an actor, and it turns out he's a very good director and writer as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about the collaboration with him? Because when you star in a show that he writes, your input has to be major in a way. So.
He definitely had the pilot script set before I received it. There were some loose ends that we wanted to refine together, and we sat down and had several meetings about sort of a little bit more of her history and maybe what's the story with her parents a little bit. When did she leave this town with her mother, and where did she go from Ireland? What made her reinvent herself over the 20 years while she was away from Ireland? So those are the kinds of things that we talked at length about, and things that would just make us laugh, and we're like, that's funny, let's put that in, I think we have a similar sense of humor, so it was very easy to give ideas that were accepted and encouraged because we kind of have a similar sensibility.
Yeah. What kind of humor, how would you describe that humor or that sense of humor that you have in common?
It's slightly absurd. Like there's an absurdness about this show. It's slightly bizarre, and you really have to sort of allow yourself to just go for the ride. You can't sort of overanalyze this. It's fun. It's meant to be fun. You're not going to be, breaking it down like Severance in a certain way. This is like a fun romp.
Mm. And there's also a dimension of Hollywood satire in the show, with the U.S. coming, this U.S. show, because it's about a U.S. television show that comes to Ireland and has a take on local Celt culture. There's this dialogue that I really like. It's not in the trailer, but it says, "It's television, don't expect them to tell you what really happened." We recently had the franchise, then now the studio by Seth Rogen, where Hollywood is looking at itself. What's the catch when television speaks about itself?
I think television comes into our homes every day. It's such a huge part of our life, and yet a lot of people don't know how it's made. And there's a bit of a fascination and a little bit of an annoyance about it too. And Hollywood likes to talk about themselves because they do, but they also like to make fun of themselves. And I think there's also, so I think it's fun for everyone to join in making fun of us, because sometimes we deserve to be made fun of. But I also think it's fun for people to see how the sausage gets made. And I think, you know, sometimes when people write about Hollywood, they get to express their frustrations or their experiences, and it's maybe a little bit cathartic to get that out too.
There's also something in the show about cultural differences, obviously, because your character has left Ireland 20 years before the show actually happens. And she, you know, she says, I lived in America, after someone calls her rude. Does that aspect of the show interest you in particular?
Comparing the sort of Irish culture to the Americans
sort of,
coming in.
the way that she's an American, you know, very American in a way, and we feel like she's not completely that.
Yes, I think there's an element of trying to make my character different, that the community comments on how she dresses herself and how she presents herself, and that it's quite different from, and we were hoping, you know, if we get to continue to do this, that maybe as Wendy is in her hometown, that maybe she falls back into a little bit of the comfort of the Irish community, and that will show that in sort of how she presents herself. But she comes in quite put together and a little bossy and a little sort of owning the place, even though she's really the outsider. So yeah, I think that's an interesting element of watching Ireland look at the US like that.
And talking about that character, Wendy Patterson, she's obviously a sort of a woman at a crossroads. We'll see it in the 2 episodes tonight. You know, she's waiting for something to happen in her life. That's how I saw it, actually. I don't know if you agree with that, but there's an intimate aspect of her that we might be able to discover. She seems to regret a time where she was more adventurous. There's almost a small melancholy in her, something a little sad about maybe not having become the woman she thought she'd be 20 years ago.
I think this character has left her hometown and tried to reinvent herself. There's a secret that is revealed that you guys will see. That is a secret so extreme and fantastic that no one would ever believe her. And one of the reasons she's left town is because her family didn't believe her, her community didn't believe her. So she's had to live with this secret that she can't share with anyone. And so she's built up this sort of defense, which is a little tough. And also she sort of uses humor, but she's not that funny. So she tries to sort of lay these jokes out on people, and everyone just looks at her like, you know, which I thought was a really fun part of this character. Someone who puts up a wall and a defense mechanism, but it doesn't always work. I think sometimes when we see a funny character on film, everyone in the room thinks they're funny. If they're funny, then everyone laughs, and this is the opposite. She tries and it doesn't work, and I think that's sort of a quirky, fun part of her. But I think she not necessarily regrets her adventurous past, but regrets that she's never found the answers that she's needed. And so at this time in her life, she thinks, I'm successful, I've got this big Hollywood production, and I'm gonna go home, the big star, and everyone's gonna admire me, and then the truth will come out, and everything will go my way. And of course, nothing goes her way. But I think she's been chasing answers.
And how do you prep for that in terms of the craft of acting for a role like that? What kind of, you know, how do you plunge into that character? Do you just come on like with nothing in your head, just trying to be spontaneous, or do you actually work a lot before everything?
I did a lot of, even though Wendy has left Ireland 20 years before, I wanted to have that sense of self, of being from a place. So I watched a ton of Irish movies. I watched many documentaries on Ireland, because even though it's not her world now, it's in her bones, it's in her blood. And so I wanted there to be a little bit of a familiarity that I think when you educate yourself in that way, it just lives in you. So I wanted to have that living in me. And then as these absurd circumstances happen, which will lead to all sorts of fun humor, to just be able to just react to it. And I know personally how it feels to walk in with a certain expectation and have that bubble burst and to just sort of let that happen to her time and time again. And so that was about so much about the circumstances in it. But I just wanted to have that sort of core of who she used to be.
There's something, you know, just a question more general about how is it possible to be original today at a time where there's so much TV? We're post-peak TV now, but still, there's a lot of shows out there. You know, there's this line in episode 2 that I like. Someone's talking about the story that they have to tell, and she says, shaping the story into something people would put down their phones to watch is such a slog. You know, that tells something about the state of creativity today.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with people's attention as well, our short attention span, because I know I do it. If it's a show that doesn't need my full attention, I'm shopping online and I'm looking up and I'm buying shoes and and there are shows that you just can't do that. And I'm hoping that this is so unique. Listen, there's a lot of shows out there, and there's a little bit of something for everyone at this point. Really, you can find any genre, any sort of thing that you're looking for, it's out there. But there's nothing like this. And I really hope that this is real escapism, and this is fun. And there's a lot of stuff out there in the world right now that's not fun. I'm not talking about television, I'm just talking about things in the world. And this is really like, sit back and relax and enjoy and have a good laugh, because we all really need one.
Yeah, I agree. and Wendy also has a very particular way to present herself to the world. You know, in a way there's a bigger-than-life quality to her. Almost old-school Hollywood, that's how I see it. Is this an idea you can relate to at all? Maybe more generally in your career? Not
you think she feels old-school Hollywood?
That's how I feel she presents herself to the world, even though she's not, you know, it's not the actual job that she's doing is not old school at all. But
yeah, I think that you'll see moments of my character where she's alone in her hotel room or she's on the plane, and you see that she has a lot of vices. She likes to drink, she likes to get high, and you see her relax into being alone and letting that facade drop. But then when she has to be on, she sort of puts it together and puts on an act. But really, she really wants to just go home and get high, you know.
Okay, I see. But still sticking to my idea of old school Hollywood, did you have any heroines when you were growing up, like movie stars that you looked up to, or, you know?
I did, you know, I grew up in a small town myself in Idaho, and the idea of Hollywood and film and how it was made was very distant. It was something that really only came on the television set. It never was, they didn't seem like real people to me. And so I was really swept away by watching them, but I never thought of them as real humans. So early on, I fell in love with Anne Margaret from watching Bye Bye Birdie. I loved the idea of singing and dancing and acting all at once. I watched I Love Lucy every single day, and I thought she was remarkable.
Lucille Ball.
Yeah, Lucille Ball. And those were, and then also I was a dancer. So so some of my heroes were like Margot Fontaine, you know, ballerinas. And I was sort of, you know, a whimsical little child. So I liked to imagine sort of putting myself in those scenarios, but I never really knew that they were real people.
Mm. And that child that you just mentioned became a great actress and, you know, who played some quite iconic characters. We have a picture here that would like to see. If you recognize that woman, there. It's going to, yes. Who is this?
That's Joan Holloway.
Yeah. Well, you know, we all have here the utmost respect for your work and what you did in Mad Men.
Thank you.
It was really a landmark of, you know, contemporary television. And please please tell us a little bit the story of how you got into Mad Men, and because she was not supposed to be such an important character when Matt Weiner, the creator, wrote the pilot, I think.
Yeah, Joan was a guest star, and was going to be a smaller role when it was first written, and I auditioned for the role. I read for Joan, and then I got brought back to audition a few days or maybe a week later, and I auditioned for the role of Midge, which was Don Draper's mistress that was an artist at the time. And I thought, oh, this is a sexy role. Maybe this is the role. And then they brought me back again to read for Joan again. And I went, okay, well, I just like the script so much, so whatever role they want to give me, I'm happy. And so when I was hired, it was as a guest spot. And then Matt Weiner has said to me, once he saw the Joan character with the Peggy character, that he sort of thought they couldn't exist without one another. And so he really loved the dynamic of seeing the juxtaposition of such completely different kind of women and how they got this very unusual friendship. So the role became larger, and then she became so rich and grew so much from the beginning to the end. Like, I get a little misty because I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Did you know, because she became iconic, and she became so much more than iconic. And how did you help shape her, you know? Because obviously writers write, actors act, but there's something in between that happens.
Yeah, I remember in the beginning, Matt was always incredibly available to us as actors because you don't get a lot of rehearsal time in television, and so we would sit and do a big table read of the script, and then after the table read, Matt would come up to each actor and say, I want to talk to you before you're on set so you know what we want to achieve in this scene. I want to give you notes so you can think about it before you're actually on set. So he was always available in that way, and then anytime we needed to call him, he was immediately available. And I remember early on calling him and going, so is she just a bitch? Like, is she just mean? And he would say, no, she really wants to help. She really wants to give advice, and she really wants to be helpful. And I kind of took that note all the way through, and it gave her, I think, a lot of heart, and it gave her depth, and she was not just the best secretary in the world. She was a wife, and she was a mother, and she was a good friend and a roommate, and we got to see all these different sides of her. And I think that one note that he gave me in the beginning really was a richer, fuller note than he could have imagined. And I think I used that all the way through.
Oh, that's amazing. And what would you say is your favorite Joan moment, if there is one?
I mean, a Joan moment. The first picture that you showed was from an episode called Babylon in season 1. I think it was episode 5. And when I got, yes, that's the image. When I got this script, we hadn't seen Joan that much yet in the show. And so this was, if you guys watch the show, this is when we introduce the lipstick, and we see the men on one side of this one-way glass and the women all on the other side, and Joan is sort of orchestrating this sort of theater. And then we also see she leaves the office and she goes and has an affair with Roger Sterling, and that's revealed. When I got this script, I cried. You can see I'm a crier. It was so special, and I thought, oh my God, there's so much to work with here. I couldn't believe that I got to do this role. And this is a very sassy moment where Joan knows that the men are on the other side. The other women don't know. And she turns around and looks to Roger, who she's having an affair with, and gives him a look and turns around and bends over. And it is powerful, and it's seductive, and it's manipulative, and I loved it.
I think what we all were fascinated with, you know, Joan in Mad Men is her trajectory. You were mentioning that a couple of minutes ago, because she starts as secretary office manager, and she ends up a partner, I think, and then she splits from that. She even starts her own production company. That's her final touch. That's the last of her that we see. She's going to start something of her own, you know, and she's also a woman who's constantly looked at by men, and also actually a couple of women, as an object of desire. All of this seems so contemporary in the way it shapes a very complex female character. You know.
It is. I mean, through the years, a lot of people said it's called Mad Men, but it feels like Mad Women sometimes, because all the female characters were so fully realized and fully drawn out. And to me, to be able to play that character and encapsulate her and feel her struggle, and to see her fight for respect and fight for her place. By the last episode, when Matt wrote that she's at home starting her own company, it felt like a gift. It felt like a present to Joan, that she had worked that hard, and here she was starting small, you know, starting from her living room, but the way he honored her, I just thought was beautiful, and what a send-off, you know. And yeah, I mean, she's also been called a feminist so many times, but I think that's another beautiful thing, is I don't think she started off as one, or she didn't know she was one. She was behaving in a feminist way, in a way that she had moved from her home state of Washington to New York City, and she was in the workplace. Those were already bold, you know, moves, but she was still very aware of her place, and that there were certain opportunities she just couldn't have. And so for her to discover that she needed more, that's when I think she became, that she knew she was a feminist. And he let that play through all the way to the end.
And the show ended 10 years ago, so before 2017 and the Me Too thing that's still going on today. So it tells a lot also about how visionary maybe it was, in a way. Is that how you look at it today when you look back?
I'm so proud of the conversations that people had after they watched each episode, back when we had to wait each week, you know, to watch an episode, which I'm so happy we did, because people got to live with it all week long and talk about it at work and talk about it with their friends. And that's one of my proudest things. That's one of the things I'm most proud about the show, is the conversations that it started, because people were having real conversations about sexism, racism, and very important topics that not many shows sort of spur. And people were writing articles on it, and it was, you know, it really exploded, because we were making people face some stuff that they hadn't thought about by just looking at one generation or two generations away from where we were. It was so close that you had to talk about it, because you think, well, have we gotten that? Have we changed? Have we gotten that much further along? And it's so close. And I think that it was far enough away to look like a period piece, and people got excited about the clothes and the sets and all those things, but it was close enough that you could still see your parents and your grandparents in those images.
Before we have to wrap this, I just want to mention that you've done so much other work than this in the past 15 years, including with director Nicholas Winding Refn for Drive and the Neon Demon. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences and that sort of reflect on the difference between TV and movies today?
Yeah, I love Drive, and I'm so proud to have been a part of it. But it also was extraordinary for me, because I met Nick there, and I worked with him again. We're friends, and I know we'll work together again. But I also got to meet Ryan Gosling, who then cast me in his directorial debut, Lost River. So that was a huge thrill to be able to work with him twice, and the compliment of working with an actor who obviously had such a good experience that when he got to cast his leading role, he came to me. That was an enormous compliment. And it introduced me into art indie film that no one had seen me in before, and opened up that door for me in an incredible way. And it's, I think, an incredible film, you know, that I think people will talk about and remember for a very long time. People come up to me all the time and say it's their favorite film. So it was, like Mad Men, it opened a lot of doors for me. And as far as the difference between doing film and television, you know, I think, especially in Drive, I had a very small role, but it was very specific. And so you just concentrate on just getting that exact moment in time exactly right. And in television, you have this other wonderful side where you get to know your character slowly each time you get a new script. So you have a certain knowledge of your character in the first episode, but by episode 5, she has a history with these people around her. And so I think it just gets, the performance can get richer and richer and richer because you have history and you start to know how the character is acting. And each time you get a script, you get excited to open it up and say, what's she gonna do this week? And so it sort of unravels slowly, which I think is delicious, and it's something that I really love about television. So they both have their merits and completely different. And completely different in a storytelling kind of way.
Yes, obviously. And we're going to watch the 2 episodes in 1 minute, I think. But just one last question about what advice you would give a young actress or actor today who wants to start in this business?
I would say, 1, you have to really love acting. Don't do it for any other reason. Don't do it because you want to be famous or because you think it's glamorous. It's not. It's hard. So you have to really love it. And then do your homework. Know your lines. Ask questions. Learn from the people who are on set that have been there longer. Listen to them. Soak it in. And take as much as you can, because all those people around you are going to educate you. And if you're respectful, they'll respect you back. And it's a team effort. And you can't forget that.
Thank you so much. We'll see the result of that now. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you guys so much.